On Thursday, the 4th of August, 1892, Andrew and Abby Borden were found brutally murdered in their home in Fall River, Massachusetts. I'm going to go straight in with multiple content warnings here. I will indeed be discussing blood, guts, gore, and murder in what follows. Lizzie Borden, daughter of Andrew Borden and stepdaughter to Abby, was arrested. Now, she was eventually acquitted, but the murder has gone officially unsolved to this day, and many people speculate that Lizzie did in fact do the deed. That's certainly the viewpoint of The Fall River Axe Murders, a 1981 short story by Angela Carter, which is the feature of this evening's Tales by Candlelight. You know the drill by now. I read, you listen, and then you let me know your thoughts in the comments before I unleash upon you a hefty analysis video. And I also want to add even more content warnings here. Carter's story features some racist language, animal abuse, fatphobic language. It honestly checks nearly every content warning box, so consider this your warning. But before we get into all that, welcome. I'm Rosie, this is Mousy, and we make videos on lots of creepy books, so please do subscribe if that's your jam. Eternal thanks to our wonderful patrons over on Patreon. We are so grateful for your support, and as always, there's a link down below if you fancy joining up. What's interesting about Carter's story is that she doesn't depict Lizzie as something straight out of a horror film, as so many stories and films choose to do. In Carter's hands, Lizzie becomes something else. A victim? Maybe. A feminist icon? Perhaps. A vessel for female rage? Oh, yes. So sit back, relax, keep an eye out for any hatchet-wielding intruders, and enjoy this reading of Carter's The Fall River Axe Murders. Lizzie Borden with an axe gave her father 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her mother 41. Early in the morning of the 4th of August, 1892, in Fall River, Massachusetts. Hot, hot, hot. Very early in the morning, before the factory whistle, but even at this hour, everything shimmers and quivers under the attack of white, furious sun already high in the still air. Its inhabitants have never come to terms with these hot, humid summers, for it is the humidity more than the heat that makes them intolerable. The weather clings like a low fever you cannot shake off. The Indians who lived here first had the sense to take off their buckskins when hot weather came and sit up to their necks in ponds. Not so the descendants of the industrious, self-mortifying saints who imported the Protestant ethic wholesale into a country intended for the siesta and are proud of flying in the face of nature. In most latitudes with summers like these, everything slows down then. You stay all day in penumbra behind drawn blinds and closed shutters. You wear clothes loose enough to make your own breeze to cool yourself when you infrequently move. But the ultimate decade of the last century finds us at the high point of hard work here. All will soon be bustle. Men will go out into the furnace of the morning well wrapped up in flannel underclothes, linen shirts, vests and coats and trousers of sturdy woolen cloth, and they garrote themselves with neckties too. They think it so virtuous to be uncomfortable. And today it is the middle of a heatwave. So early in the morning, and the mercury has touched the middle 80s already and shows no sign of slowing down its headlong ascent. As far as clothes were concerned, women only appeared to get off more lightly. On this morning, when after breakfast and the performance of a few household duties, Lizzie Borden will murder her parents, she will, on rising, don a simple cotton frock. But under that went a long, starched cotton petticoat. Another short starched cotton petticoat, long drawers, woolen stockings, a camise, and a whalebone corset that took her viscera in a stern hand and squeezed them very tightly. She also strapped a heavy linen napkin between her legs because she was menstruating. In all these clothes, out of sorts and nauseous as she was, in this dementing heat, her belly in a vice, she will heat up a flat iron on a stove and press handkerchiefs with the heated iron until it is time for her to go down to the cellar woodpile to collect the hatchet with which our imagination, Lizzie Borden with an axe, always equips her, just as we always visualise St. Catherine rolling along her wheel, the emblem of her passion. Soon, in just as many clothes as Miss Lizzie wears, if less fine, Bridget, the servant girl, will slop kerosene on a sheet of last night's newspaper, crumpled with a stick or two of kindling. When the fire settles down, she will cook breakfast. The fire will keep her suffocating company as she washes up afterwards. In a serge suit, one look at which would be enough to bring you out in prickly heat, old Borden will perambulate the perspiring town, truffling for money like a pig until he will return home mid-morning to keep a pressing appointment with destiny. But nobody here is up and about yet. It is still early morning before the factory whistle, the perfect stillness of hot weather, a sky already white, the shadowless light of New England like blows from the eye of God, and the sea white and the river white. If we have largely forgotten the physical discomforts of the itching, oppressive garments of the past and the corrosive effects of perpetual physical discomfort on the nerves, then we have mercifully forgotten, too, the smells of the past, the domestic odours. Ill-washed flesh, infrequently changed underwear, chamber pots, slop pails, inadequately plumbed privies, rotting food, unattended teeth. And the streets are no fresher than indoors. The omnipresent acridity of horse piss and dung, drains, sudden stench of old death from butchers' shops, the amniotic horror of the fishmonger. You would drench your handkerchief with cologne and press it to your nose. You would splash yourself with Parma violet so that the reek of fleshly decay you always carried with you was overlaid by that of the embalming parlour. You would abhor the air you breathed. 5 living creatures are asleep in a house on 2nd Street, Fall River. They comprise 2 old men and 3 women. The first old man owns all the women by either marriage, birth, or contract. His house is as narrow as a coffin, and that was how he made his fortune. He used to be an undertaker, but he has recently branched out in several directions, and all his branches bear fruit of the most fiscally gratifying kind. But you would never think, to look at his house, that he is a successful and a prosperous man. His house is cramped, comfortless, small and mean, unpretentious, you might say, if you were his sycophant, while 2nd Street itself saw better days some time ago. The Borden house, see Andrew J. Borden in flowing script on the brass plate next to the door, stands by itself with a few scant feet of yard on either side. On the left is a stable, out of use since he sold the horse. In the back lot grow a few pear trees, laden at this season. On this particular morning, as luck would have it, only one of the 2 Borden girls sleeps in their father's house. Emma Lenora, his oldest daughter, has taken herself off to nearby New Bedford for a few days to catch the ocean breeze, and so she will escape the slaughter. Few of their social class stay in Fall River in the sweating months of June, July and August, but then few of their social class live on 2nd Street, in the low part of town, where heat gathers like fog. Lizzie was invited away too, to a summer house by the sea to join a merry band of girls, but as if on purpose to mortify her flesh. As if important business kept her in the exhausted town, as if a wicked fairy spelled her in 2nd Street, she did not go. The other old man is some kind of kin of Borden's. He doesn't belong here. He's visiting, passing through. He's a chance bystander. He is irrelevant. Write him out of the script. Even though his presence in the doomed house is historically unimpeachable, the colouring of this domestic apocalypse must be crude, and the design profoundly simplified for the maximum emblematic effect. Write John Vinicum Morse out of the script. 1 old man and 2 of his women sleep in the house on 2nd Street. The City Hall clock whirs and sputters the prolegomena to the first stroke of 6, and Bridget's alarm clock gives a sympathetic skip and clicks as the minute hand stutters on the hour. Back the little hammer jerks, about to hit the bell on top of her clock, but Bridget's damp eyelids do not shudder with premonition as she lies in her sticking flannel nightgown under one thin sheet on an iron bedstead, lies on her back, as the good nuns taught her in her Irish girlhood, in case she dies during the night to make less trouble for the undertaker. She is a good girl, on the whole, although her temper is sometimes uncertain, and then she will talk back to the missus sometimes and will be forced to confess the sin of impatience to the priest. Overcome by heat and nausea, for everyone in the house is going to wake up sick today, she will return to this little bed later in the morning. While she snatches a few moments' rest upstairs, all hell will be let loose downstairs. A rosary of brown glass beads, a cardboard-backed colour print of the Virgin bought from a Portuguese shop, a fly-blown photograph of her solemn mother in Donegal. These lie or are propped on the mantelpiece that, however sharp the Massachusetts winter, has never seen a lit stick. A banged tin trunk at the foot of the bed holds all Bridget's worldly goods. There is a stiff chair beside the bed with, upon it, a candlestick, matches, the alarm clock that resounds the room with a dyadic metallic clang, for it is a joke between Bridget and her mistress that the girl could sleep through anything, and so she needs the alarm as well as the factory whistles that are just about to blast off, just this very second about to blast off. A splintered deal washstand holds the jug and bowl she never uses. She isn't going to lug water up to the 3rd floor just to wipe herself down, is she? Not when there's water enough in the kitchen sink. Old Borden sees no necessity for baths. He does not believe in total immersion. To lose his natural oils would be to rob his body. A frameless square of mirror reflects in corrugated waves a cracked, dusty soap dish containing a quantity of black metal hairpins. A bright rectangle of paper blinds move the beautiful shadows of the pear trees. Although Bridget left the door open a crack in forlorn hopes of coaxing a draught into the room, all the spent heat of the previous day has packed itself tightly into her attic. A dandruff of spent whitewash flakes from the ceiling, where a fly drearily whines. The house is thickly redolent of sleep, that sweetish, clinging smell. Still, all still. In all the house, nothing moving except the droning fly. Stillness on the staircase. Stillness pressing against the blinds. Stillness, mortal stillness, in the room below, where master and mistress share the matrimonial bed. Were the drapes open or the lamp lit, one could better observe the differences between this room and the austerity of the maid's room. Here is a carpet, splashed with vigorous flowers, even if the carpet is of the cheap and cheerful variety. There are mauve, ochre, and harsh cerise flowers on the wallpaper, even though the wallpaper was old when the Bordens arrived in the house. A dresser with another distorting mirror. No mirror in this house does not take your face and twist it. On the dresser, a runner embroidered with forget-me-nots. On the runner, a bone comb missing 3 teeth and lightly threaded with grey hairs. A hairbrush backed with ebonized wood, and a number of lace mats underneath small china boxes holding safety pins, hairnets, etc. The little hairpiece that Mrs. Borden attaches to her balding scalp for daytime wear is curled up like a dead squirrel. But of Borden's male occupation of this room, there is no trace because he has a dressing room of his own, through that door on the left. What about the other door, the one next to it? It leads to the back stairs. And yet that other door, partially concealed behind the head of the heavy mahogany bed? If it were not kept securely locked, it would take you into Miss Lizzie's room. One peculiarity of this house is the number of doors the rooms contain, and a further peculiarity, how all these doors are always locked. A house full of locked doors that open only into other rooms with other locked doors, for upstairs and downstairs, all the rooms lead in and out of one another like a maze in a bad dream. It is a house without passages. There is no part of the house that has not been marked as some inmate's personal territory. It is a house with no shared, no common spaces between one room and the next. It is a house of privacies, sealed as close as if they had been sealed with wax on a legal document. The only way to Emma's room is through Lizzie's. There is no way out of Emma's room. It is a dead end. The Bordens' custom of locking all the doors inside and outside dates from a time a few years ago, shortly before Bridget came to work for them, when the house was burgled. A person unknown came through the side door while Borden and his wife had taken one of their rare trips out together. He had loaded her into a trap and set out for the farm they owned at Swansea to ensure that his tenant was not bilking him. The girls stayed at home in their rooms, napping on their beds or repairing ripped hems or sewing loose buttons more securely or writing letters or contemplating acts of charity among the deserving poor or staring vacantly into space. I can't imagine what else they might do. What the girls do when they are on their own is unimaginable to me. Emma is more mysterious by far than Lizzie, for we know much less about her. She is a blank space. She has no life. The door from her room leads only into the room of her sister. Girls is, of course, a courtesy term. Emma is well into her 40s, Lizzie in her 30s, but they did not marry and so live in their father's house where they remain in a fictive, protracted childhood. While the master and the mistress were away and the girls asleep or otherwise occupied, some person or persons unknown tiptoed up the back stairs to the matrimonial bedroom and pocketed Mrs. Borden's gold watch and chain, the coral necklace and silver bangle of her remote childhood, and a roll of dollar bills old Borden kept under clean union suits in the 3rd drawer of the bureau on the left. The intruder attempted to force the lock of the safe, that featureless block of black iron like a slaughtering block or an altar sitting squarely next to the bed on old Borden's side, but it would have taken a crowbar to penetrate adequately the safe, and the intruder tackled it with a pair of nail scissors that were lying handy on the dresser, so that didn't come off. Then the intruder pissed and shat on the cover of the Borden's bed, knocked the clutter of this and that on the dresser to the floor, smashing everything, swept into old Borden's dressing room, there to maliciously assault the funeral coat as it hung in the mothballed dark of his closet with the selfsame nail scissors that had been used on the safe. The nail scissors, now split in two, were abandoned on the closet floor, retired to the kitchen, smashed the flour crock and the treacle crock, and then scrawled an obscenity or two on the parlour window with the cake of soap that lived beside the scullery sink. What a mess! Lizzie stared with vague surprise at the parlour window. She heard the soft bang of the open screen door swinging idly, although there was no breeze. What was she doing, standing clad only in her corset in the middle of the sitting room? How had she got there? Had she crept down when she heard the screen door rattle? She did not know. She could not remember. All that happened was, all at once here she is, in the parlour, with a cake of soap in her hand. She experienced a clearing of the senses, and only then began to scream and shout. "Help! We have been burgled! Help!" Emma came down and comforted her, as the big sister had comforted the little one since babyhood. Emma it was who cleared from the sitting room carpet the flour and treacle Lizzie had heedlessly tracked in from the kitchen on her bare feet in her somnambulist trance. But of the missing jewellery and dollar bills no trace could be found. I cannot tell you what effect the burglary had on Borden. It utterly disconcerted him. He was a man stunned. It violated him even. He was a man raped. It took away his hitherto unshakable confidence in the integrity inherent in things. The burglary so moved them that the family broke its habitual silence with one another in order to discuss it. They blamed it on the Portuguese, obviously, but sometimes on the Canucks. If their outrage remained constant and did not diminish with time, the focus of it varied according to their moods, although they always pointed the finger of suspicion at the strangers and newcomers who lived in the gruesome ramparts of the company housing a few squalid blocks away. They did not always suspect the dark strangers exclusively. Sometimes they thought the culprit might very well have been one of the mill hands fresh from saucy Lancashire across the ocean who committed the crime, for a slum landlord has few friends among the criminal classes. However, the possibility of a poltergeist occurs to Mrs. Borden, although she does not know the word. She knows, however, that her younger stepdaughter is a strange one, and could make the plates jump out of sheer spite if she wanted to. But the old man adores his daughter. Perhaps it is then, after the shock of the burglary, that he decides she needs a change of scene, a dose of sea air, a long voyage, for it was after the burglary he sent her on the grand tour. After the burglary, the front door and the side door were always locked 3 times if one of the inhabitants of the house left it for just so much as to go into the yard and pick up a basket of fallen pears when pears were in season, or if the maid went out to hang out a bit of washing, or old Borden after supper took a piss under a tree. From this time dated the custom of locking all the bedroom doors on the inside when one was on the inside oneself, or on the outside when one was on the outside. Old Borden locked his bedroom door in the morning when he left it, and put the key in sight of all on the kitchen shelf. The burglary awakened old Borden to the evanescent nature of private property. He thereafter undertook an orgy of investment. He would forthwith invest his surplus in good brick and mortar, for who can make away with an office block? A number of leases fell in simultaneously at just this time on a certain street in the downtown area of the city, and Borden snapped them up. He owned the block. He pulled it down. He planned the Borden building, an edifice of shops and offices, dark red brick, deep tan stone with cast iron detail, from whence in perpetuity he might reap a fine harvest of unsaleable rents, and this monument, like that of Ozymandias, would survive him. And indeed stands foursquare and handsome, the Andrew Borden building on South Main Street. Not bad for a fish peddler's son, eh? For although Borden is an ancient name in New England, and the Borden clan between them owned the better part of Fall River, our Borden, old Borden, these Bordens, did not spring from a wealthy branch of the family. There were Bordens, and he was the son of a man who sold fresh fish in a wicker basket from house to house to house. Old Borden's parsimony was bred of poverty, but learned to thrive best on property. For thrift has a different meaning for the poor. They get no joy of it. It is stark necessity to them. Who ever heard of a penniless miser? Morose and gaunt, this self-made man is one of few pleasures. His vocation is capital accumulation. What is his hobby? Why, grinding the faces of the poor. First, Andrew Borden was an undertaker, and death, recognising an accomplice, did well by him. In the city of spindles, few made old bones. The little children who laboured in the mills died with a special frequency. When he was an undertaker, no, it was not true that he cut the feet off corpses to fit into a job lot of coffins bought cheap as Civil War surplus. That was a rumour put about by his enemies. With the profit from his coffins, he bought up a tenement or two and made fresh profit off the living. He bought shares in the mills. Then he invested in a bank or two, so that now he makes profit on money itself, which is the purest form of profit of all. Foreclosures and evictions are meat and drink to him. He loves nothing better than a little usury. He is halfway on the road to his first million. At night, to save the kerosene, he sits in lampless dark. He waters the pear trees with his urine, waste not, want not. And soon as the daily newspapers are done with, he rips them up in geometric squares and stores them in the cellar privy, so that they can all wipe their arses with them. He mourns the loss of the good, organic waste that flushes down the WC. He would like to charge the very cockroaches in the kitchen rent. And yet he has not grown fat on all this. The pure flame of his passion has melted off his flesh. His skin sticks to his bones out of sheer parsimony. Perhaps it is from his first profession that he has acquired his bearing, for he walks with the stately dignity of a hearse. To watch old Borden bearing down the street towards you was to be filled with an instinctual respect for mortality, whose gaunt ambassador he seemed to be. And it made you think, too, what a triumph over nature it was when we rose up to walk on 2 legs instead of 4 in the first place. For he held himself upright with such ponderous assertion, it was a perpetual reminder to all who witnessed his progress how it is not natural to be upright, that it is a triumph of will over gravity, in itself a transcendence of the spirit over matter. His spine is like an iron rod, forged, not born. Impossible to imagine that spine of old Borden's curled up in the womb in the big sea of the fetus. He walks as if his legs had joints at neither knee nor ankle, so that his feet hit the trembling earth like a bailiff pounding a door. He has a white chin-strap beard, old-fashioned already in those days. He looks as if he'd gnawed his lips off. He is at peace with his God, for he has used his talents as the good book says he should. Yet do not think he has no soft spot. Like old Lear, his heart, and more than that, his chequebook, is putty in his youngest daughter's hands. On his pinky, you cannot see it, it lies under the covers, he wears a gold ring. Not a wedding ring, but a high school ring, a singular trinket for a fabulously misanthropic miser. His youngest daughter gave it to him when she left school and asked him to wear it always, and so he always does, and will wear it to the grave to which she is going to send him later in the morning of this combustible day. He sleeps fully dressed in a flannel nightshirt over his long-sleeved underwear and a flannel nightcap, and his back is turned towards his wife of 30 years, as is hers to his. They are Mr. and Mrs. Jack Sprat in person, he tall and gaunt as a hanging judge, and she such a spreading, round little dough ball. He is a miser, while she is a glutton, a solitary eater, most innocent of vices, and yet the shadow or parodic vice of his. For he would like to eat up all the world, or, failing that, since fate has not spread him a sufficiently large table for his ambitions, he is a mute, inglorious Napoleon. He does not know what he might have done because he had never had the opportunity. Since he has not access to the entire world, he would like to gobble up the city of Fall River. But she, well, she just gently, continuously stuffs herself, doesn't she? She's always nibbling away at something, at the cud, perhaps. Not that she gets much pleasure from it either. No gourmet she, forever meditating on the exquisite difference between a mayonnaise sharpened with a few drops of Orleans vinegar or one pointed up with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. No. Abby never aspired so high. Nor would she ever think to do so, even if she had the option. She is satisfied to stick to simple gluttony, and she eschews all overtones of the sensuality of indulgence. Since she relishes not one single mouthful of the food she eats, she knows her ceaseless gluttony is no transgression. Here they lie in bed together, living embodiments of 2 of the 7 deadly sins. But he knows his avarice is no offence because he never spends any money, and she knows she is not greedy because the grub she shovels down gives her dyspepsia. She employs an Irish cook, and Bridget's rough and ready hand in the kitchen fulfills Abby's every criterion. Bread, meat, cabbage, potatoes. Abby was made for the heavy food that made her. Bridget merrily slaps on the table boiled dinners, boiled fish, cornmeal mush, Indian pudding, Johnny cakes, cookies. But those cookies, there you touch on Abby's little weakness. Molasses cookies, oatmeal cookies, raisin cookies. But when she tackles a sticky brownie oozing chocolate, then she feels a queasy sense of having gone almost too far, that sin might be just around the corner, if her stomach did not immediately palpitate like a guilty conscience. Her flannel nightdress is cut on the same lines as his nightshirt, except for the limp flannel frill around the neck. She weighs 200 pounds. She's 5 feet nothing tall. The bed sags on her side. It is the bed in which his first wife died. Last night, they dosed themselves with castor oil due to the indisposition that kept them both awake and vomiting the whole night before that. The copious result of their purges brimmed the chamber pots beneath the bed. It is fit to make a sewer faint. Back to back they lie. You could rest a sword in the space between the old man and his wife, between the old man's backbone, the only rigid thing he ever offered her, and her soft, warm, enormous bum. Their purges flailed them. Their faces show up decomposing green in the gloom of the curtained room, in which the air is too thick for flies to move. The youngest daughter dreams behind the locked door. Look at the sleeping beauty. She threw back the top sheet and her window is wide open, but there is no breeze outside this morning to shiver deliciously the screen. Bright sun floods the blinds so that the linen-coloured light shows us how Lizzie has gone to bed as for a levee in a pretty ruffled nightdress of snatched white muslin with ribbons of pastel pink satin threaded through the eyelets of the lace. For is it not the naughty 90s everywhere but dour Fall River? Don't the gilded steamships of the Fall River line signify all the squandered luxury of the Gilded Age within their mahogany and chandeliered interiors? But don't they sail away from Fall River to where, elsewhere, it is the Belle Epoque? In New York, Paris, London, champagne corks pop. In Monte Carlo, the bank is broken. Women fall backwards in a crisp meringue of petticoats for fun and profit, but not in Fall River. Oh no. So, in the immutable privacy of her bedroom, for her own delight, Lizzie puts on a rich girl's pretty nightdress, although she lives in a mean house, because she is a rich girl too. But she is plain. The hem of her nightdress is rucked up above her knees because she is a restless sleeper. Her light, dry, reddish hair, crackling with static, slipping loose from the nighttime plait, crisps and stutters over the square pillow at which she clutches as she sprawls on her stomach, having rested her cheek on the starched pillowcase for coolness' sake at some earlier hour. Lizzie was not an affectionate diminutive, but the name with which she had been christened. Since she would always be known as Lizzie, so her father reasoned, why burden her with the effete and fancy prolongation of Elizabeth? A miser in everything, he even cropped off half her name before he gave it to her. So, Lizzie it was, stark and unadorned, as she is a motherless child, orphaned at 2 years old, poor thing. Now she is 32, and yet the memory of that mother she cannot remember remains an abiding source of grief. If mother had lived, everything would have been different. How? Why? Different in what way? She wouldn't have been able to answer that, lost in a nostalgia for unknown love. Yet how could she have been loved better than by her sister Emma, who lavished the pent-up treasures of a New England spinster's heart upon the little thing? Different, perhaps, because her natural mother, the first Mrs. Borden, subject as she was to fits of sudden, wild, inexplicable rage, might have taken the hatchet to old Borden on her own account. But Lizzie loves her father. All are agreed on that. Lizzie adores the adoring father who, after her mother died, took to himself another wife. Her bare feet twitch a little, like those of a dog dreaming of rabbits. Her sleep is thin and unsatisfying, full of vague terrors and indeterminate menaces, to which she cannot put a name or form once she is awake. Sleep opens within her a disorderly house. But all she knows is she sleeps badly, and this last stifling night has been troubled too by vague nausea and the gripes of her female pain. Her room is harsh with the metallic smell of menstrual blood. Yesterday evening, she slipped out of the house to visit a woman friend. Lizzie was agitated. She kept picking nervously at the shirring on the front of her dress. "I am afraid that somebody will do something," said Lizzie. Mrs. Borden, and here Lizzie lowered her voice, and her eyes looked everywhere in the room except at Miss Russell. "Mrs. Borden, will you ever believe? Mrs. Borden thinks somebody is trying to poison us." She used to call her stepmother Mother, as duty bade, but after a quarrel about money, after her father deeded half a slum property to her stepmother 5 years before, Lizzie always, with cool scrupulosity, spoke of Mrs. Borden when she was forced to speak of her, and called her Mrs. Borden to her face, too. "Last night, Mrs. Borden and poor father were so sick. I heard them through the wall. And as for me, I haven't felt myself all day. I have felt so strange, so very strange." For there were those somnambulist fits. Since a child, she endured occasional peculiar spells, as the idiom of the place and time called odd lapses of behaviour, unexpected involuntary trances, moments of disconnection. Those times when the mind misses a beat. Miss Russell hastened to discover an explanation within reason. She was embarrassed to mention the peculiar spells. Everyone knew there was nothing odd about the Borden girls. "Something you ate? It must have been something you have eaten. What was yesterday's supper?" solicitously queried kind Miss Russell. "Warmed over swordfish. We had it hot for dinner, though I could not take much. Then Bridget heated up the leftovers for supper, but again, for myself, I could only get down a forkful. Mrs. Borden ate up the remains and scoured her plate with her bread. She smacked her lips, but then was sick all night." Note of smugness here. "Oh, Lizzie, in all this heat, this dreadful heat, twice cooked fish? You know how quickly fish goes off in this heat. Bridget should have known better than to give you twice cooked fish." It was Lizzie's difficult time of the month, too. Her friend could tell by a certain haggard, glazed look on Lizzie's face. Yet her gentility forbade her to mention that. But how could Lizzie have got it into her head that the entire household was under siege from malign forces without? "There have been threats," Lizzie pursued remorselessly, keeping her eyes on her nervous fingertips. "So many people, you understand, dislike father." This cannot be denied. Miss Russell politely remained mute. "Mrs. Borden was so very sick she called the doctor in, and father was abusive towards the doctor, and shouted at him and told him he would not pay a doctor's bill whilst we had our own good castor oil in the house. He shouted at the doctor and all the neighbours heard, and I was so ashamed. There is a man, you see," and here she ducked her head while her short, pale eyelashes beat on her cheekbones. "Such a man, a dark man, with the aspect, yes, of death upon his face, Miss Russell. A dark man I've seen outside the house at unexpected hours, early in the morning, late at night. Whenever I cannot sleep in this dreadful shade, if I raise the blind and peep out, there I see him in the shadows of the pear trees in the yard, a dark man. Perhaps he puts poison in the milk in the mornings after the milkman fills his can. Perhaps he poisons the ice when the iceman comes." "How long has he been haunting you?" asked Miss Russell, properly dismayed. "Since the burglary," said Lizzie, and suddenly looked Miss Russell full in the face with a kind of triumph. How large her eyes were, prominent yet veiled, and her well-manicured fingers went on pecking away at the front of her dress as if she were trying to unpick the shirring. Miss Russell knew, she just knew this dark man was a figment of Lizzie's imagination. All in a rush, she lost patience with the girl. Dark men standing outside her bedroom window, indeed. Yet she was kind, and cast about for ways to reassure. "But Bridget is up and about when the milkman, the iceman call, and the whole street is busy and bustling too. Who would dare to put poison in either milk or ice bucket while half of Second Street looks on? Oh, Lizzie, it is the dreadful summer, the heat, the intolerable heat that's put us all out of sorts, makes us fractious and nervous, makes us sick. So easy to imagine things in this terrible weather. That taints the food and sows worms in the mind. I thought you'd planned to go away, Lizzie, to the ocean. Didn't you plan to take a little holiday by the sea? Oh, do go. Sea air would blow away these silly fancies." Lizzie neither nods nor shakes her head, but continues to worry at her shirring. For does she not have important business in Fall River? Only that morning, had she not been down to the drugstore to try to buy some prussic acid herself? But how can she tell kind Miss Russell she is gripped by an imperious need to stay in Fall River and murder her parents? She went to the drugstore on the corner of Main Street in order to buy prussic acid, but nobody would sell it to her, so she came home empty-handed. Had all that talk of poison in the vomiting house put her in mind of poison? The autopsy will reveal no trace of poison in the stomachs of either parent. She did not try to poison them. She only had it in mind to poison them. But she had been unable to buy poison. The use of poison had been denied her. So what can she be planning now? And this dark man, she pursued to the unwilling Miss Russell, oh, I have seen the moon glint upon an axe. When she wakes up, she can never remember her dreams. She only remembers she slept badly. Hers is a pleasant room of not ungenerous dimensions, seeing the house is so very small. Besides the bed and the dresser, there is a sofa and a desk. It is her bedroom, and also her sitting room and her office too, for the desk is stacked with account books of the various charitable organisations with which she occupies her ample spare time. The Fruit and Flower Mission, under whose auspices she visits the indigent old in hospital with gifts. The Women's Christian Temperance Union, for whom she extracts signatures for petitions against the demon drink. Christian Endeavour, whatever that is. This is the golden age of good works, and she flings herself into committees with a vengeance. What would the daughters of the rich do with themselves if the poor ceased to exist? There is the Newsboys' Thanksgiving Dinner Fund, and the Horse Trough Association, and the Chinese Conversion Association. No class nor kind is safe from her merciless charity. Bureau, dressing table, closet, bed, sofa. She spends her days in this room, moving between each of these dull items of furniture in a circumscribed, undeviating planetary round. She loves her privacy. She loves her room. She locks herself up in it all day. A shelf contains a book or two. Heroes of the Mission Field, The Romance of Trade, What Katie Did. On the walls, framed photographs of high school friends, sentimentally inscribed with, tucked inside one frame, a picture postcard showing a black kitten peeking through a horseshoe. A watercolour of Cape Cod seaside executed with poignant amateur incompetence. A monochrome photograph or two of works of art. A Della Robbia Madonna and the Mona Lisa. These she bought in the Uffizi and the Louvre, respectively, when she went to Europe. Europe! For don't you remember what Katie did next? The storybook heroine took the steamship to old smoky London, to elegant, fascinating Paris, to sunny, antique Rome and Florence. The storybook heroine sees Europe reveal itself before her like an interesting series of magic lantern slides on a gigantic screen. All is present and all unreal. The Tower of London, click. Notre Dame, click. The Sistine Chapel, click. Then the lights go out, and she is in the dark again. Of this journey, she has retained only the most circumspect of souvenirs, that Madonna, that Mona Lisa, reproductions of objects of art consecrated by universal approval of taste. If she came back with a bag full of memories stamped never to be forgotten, she put the bag away under the bed on which she had dreamed of the world before she set out to see it, and on which, at home again, she continued to dream, the dream having been transformed not into lived experience but into memory, which is only another kind of dreaming. Wistfully, when I was in Florence. But then, with pleasure, she corrects herself, when we were in Florence. Because a good deal, in fact most of the gratification the trip gave her, came from having set out from Fall River with a select group of daughters of respectable and affluent mill owners. Once away from 2nd Street, she was able to move comfortably in the segment of Fall River society to which she belonged by right of old name and new money, but from which, when she was at home, her father's plentiful personal eccentricities excluded her. Sharing bedrooms, sharing staterooms, sharing berths, the girls travelled together in a genteel gaggle that bore its doom already upon it, for they were the girls who would not marry now. And any pleasure they might have obtained from the variety and excitement of the trip was spoiled in advance by the knowledge they were eating up what might have been their own wedding cake, using up what should have been, if they'd had any luck, their marriage settlements. All girls pushing 30, privileged to go out and look at the world before they resign themselves to the thin condition of New England spinsterhood. But it was a case of look, don't touch. They knew they must not get their hands dirtied or their dresses crushed by the world, while their affectionate companionship en route had a certain steadfast, determined quality about it, as they bravely made the best of the second best. It was a sour trip in some ways, sour. And it was a round trip. It ended at the same place from where it had set out. Home again. The narrow house, the rooms all locked like those in Bluebeard's castle, and the fat white stepmother whom nobody loves sitting in the middle of the spiderweb. She has not budged a single inch while Lizzie was away, but she has grown fatter. This stepmother oppressed her like a spell. The days opened their cramped spaces into other cramped spaces, and old furniture, and never anything to look forward to, nothing. When old Borden dug in his pocket to shell out for Lizzie's trip to Europe, the eye of God on the pyramid blinked to see daylight, but no extravagance is too excessive for the miser's younger daughter, who is the wild card in his house and, it seems, can have anything she wants. Play ducks and drakes with her father's silver dollars if it so pleases her. He pays all her dressmaker's bills on the dot, and how she loves to dress up fine. She is addicted to dandyism. He gives her each week in pin money the same as the cook gets for wages, and Lizzie gives that which she does not spend on personal adornment to the deserving poor. He would give his Lizzie anything in the world that lives under the green sign of the dollar. She would like a pet, a kitten or a puppy. She loves small animals and birds too, poor, helpless things. She piles high the bird table all winter. She used to keep some white pouter pigeons in the disused stable, the kind that look like shuttlecocks and go vroo, croo, soft as a cloud. Surviving photographs of Lizzie Borden show a face it is difficult to look at as if you knew nothing about her. Coming events cast their shadow across her face, or else you see the shadows these events have cast. Something terrible, something ominous in this face with its jutting rectangular jaw and those mad eyes of the New England saints, eyes that belong to a person who does not listen to you, fanatic's eyes, you might say, if you knew nothing about her. If you were sorting through a box of old photographs in a junk shop and came across this particular sepia, faded face above the choked collar of the 1890s, you might murmur when you saw her, "Oh, what big eyes you have," as Red Riding Hood said to the wolf. But then you might not even pause to pick her out and look at her more closely, for hers is not in itself a striking face. But as soon as the face has a name, once you recognise her, when you know who she is and what it was she did, the face becomes as if of one possessed. And now it haunts you. You look at it again and again. It secretes mystery. This woman, with her jaw of a concentration camp attendant, and such eyes. In her old age, she wore pince-nez, and truly with the years the mad light has departed from those eyes, or else is deflected by her glasses, if indeed it was a mad light in the first place. For don't we all conceal somewhere photographs of ourselves that make us look like crazed assassins? And, in those early photographs of her young womanhood, she does not look so much like a crazed assassin as somebody in extreme solitude, oblivious of that camera, in whose direction she obscurely smiles, so that it would not surprise you to learn that she is blind. There is a mirror on the dresser in which she sometimes looks at those times when time snaps in two, and then she sees herself with blind, clairvoyant eyes, as though she were another person. Lizzie is not herself today. At those times, those irremediable times, she could have raised her muzzle to some aching moon and howled. At other times, she watches herself doing her hair and trying her clothes on. The distorting mirror reflects her with the queasy fidelity of water. She puts on dresses and then she takes them off. She looks at herself in her corset. She pats her hair. She measures herself with the tape measure. She pulls the measure tight. She pats her hair. She tries on a hat, a little hat, a chic little straw toque. She punctures it with a hairpin. She pulls the veil down. She pulls it up. She takes the hat off. She drives the hatpin into it with a strength she did not know she possessed. Time goes by, and nothing happens. She traces the outlines of her face with an uncertain hand, as if she were thinking of unfastening the bandages on her soul. But it isn't time to do that, yet. She isn't ready to be seen, yet. She is a girl of Sargasso calm. She used to keep her pigeons in the loft above the disused stable and feed them grain out of the palms of her cupped hands. She liked to feel the soft scratch of their beaks. They murmured "frou, crou" with infinite tenderness. She changed their water every day and cleaned up their leprous messes, but old Borden took a dislike to their cooing. It got on his nerves. Who'd have thought he'd had any nerves, but he invented some. They got on them. One afternoon, he took out the hatchet from the woodpile in the cellar and chopped those pigeons' heads right off, he did. Abby fancied the slaughtered pigeons for a pie, but Bridget, the servant girl, put her foot down at that. What? Make a pie out of Miss Lizzie's beloved turtle doves? Jesus, Mary and Joseph, she exclaimed with characteristic impetuousness. What can they be thinking of? Miss Lizzie is so nervy with her funny turns and all. The maid is the only one in the house with any sense, and that's the truth of it. Lizzie came home from the Fruit and Flower Mission, for whom she had been reading a tract to an old woman in a poorhouse. God bless you, Miss Lizzie. At home, all was blood and feathers. She doesn't weep, this one. It isn't her nature. She is still waters, but when moved, she changes colour. Her face flushes, it goes dark, angry, mottled red. The old man loves his daughter this side of idolatry and pays for everything she wants, but all the same, he killed her pigeons when his wife wanted to gobble them up. That is how she sees it. That is how she understands it. She cannot bear to watch her stepmother eat now. Each bite the woman takes seems to go vroo, croo. Old Borden cleaned off the hatchet and put it back in the cellar next to the woodpile. The red receding from her face, Lizzie went down to inspect the instrument of destruction. She picked it up and weighed it in her hand. That was a few weeks before, at the beginning of the spring. Her hands and feet twitch in her sleep. The nerves and muscles of this complicated mechanism won't relax, just won't relax. She is all twang, all tension. She is taut as the strings of a wind harp, from which random currents of the air pluck out tunes that are not our tunes. At the first stroke of the City Hall clock, the first factory hooter blares, and then, on another note, another and another, the Metacomet mill, the American mill, the mechanics mill, until every mill in the entire town sings out aloud in a common anthem of summoning, and hot alleys where the factory folk live blacken with the hurrying throng. Hurry, scurry, to loom, to bobbin, to spindle, to dye shop, as to the places of worship, men and women too, and children, the streets blacken, the sky darkens as the chimneys now belch forth, the clang, bang, clatter of the mills commences. Bridget's clock leaps and shudders on its chair, about to sound its own alarm. Their day, the Bordens' fatal day, trembles on the brink of beginning. Outside, above, in the already burning air, see, the angel of death roosts on the roof tree. Enjoyed listening to this tale of female malcontent? Learn more about The Yellow Wallpaper, another short story that features a oppressed and maddened woman, by clicking here next.